it outperformed the rest of my content like almost 10, 15 times.
So the big question is, what are the top agents doing to absolutely crush it in real estate, grow their teams, and add more transactions year over year while so many struggle? If you ever thought about this, you're not alone. No one has been able to get the answers until now.
We spent the last few years helping agents sell billions in real estate, rubbing shoulders with top producers, which got us thinking, how can we expose more people to these insights to help raise the standard in the whole real estate industry? We then realized that we could help bridge the gap by getting the secrets from the best of the best so that you can succeed. My name is Andrew Dunn.
And my name is Peter Michael. Welcome to Elite Agent Secrets.
I think one of the most important things that we can touch on too is figuring out, how do you know which audience you're going after, especially if you're new? How do you know if you're going after quote unquote first-time home buyers or upgrades, downgrades, or investors? How did you nail that down?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I want to kind of preface that with, we niche down in terms of, or niche, sorry, I'm Canadian. We niche down in terms of human transition as opposed to geolocation. And I mean, you guys will get this better than most, but we do that because geofarming was necessary before we had the internet. It was like, how many doors can you knock on? How many flyers can you put out? How can you be consistent and frequent in front of the same people? And you could only do that manually. Now we have the internet. We can niche down in ways that like human psychology is actually being used effectively. And so that's why we always target, life transition or someone like a niche that actually has something in common and has common pain points. So usually what I will say is like, there's a couple factors that we want to take into account. Right? If you're in a smaller market, what's the demographic made up of? Or do you have a large amount of people who are downsizing? Do you have a lot of people is it a gentrification situation where you've got a lot of younger families coming in? Look at what's happening in the trends in the market, but also like, look at yourself, right? Every once in a while, I'll have like, a 21-year-old guy who says, who's never bought real estate before, and says, I just got my license. I want to work in luxury waterfront.
Where you get that all the time.
All the time.
Right? I'm sure you do, but like, that's not going to happen today.
I want to sell the penthouse on Porsche Tower in Miami. It's like, I'm sure you do,
exactly.
mate.
Everybody does. $200,000 commission. We're all lining up to get it.
The queue starts that way and it's a couple of miles long. So, yeah, I mean.
So I think that also like having some self-awareness in terms of like, who's actually going to resonate with you right now, and how can you be authentic and put yourself out there in a real, authentic, unmanufactured way, and actually attract people who you're going to enjoy working with. And I think for a lot of people that's just where you are in your life or what experiences you've had. Like, we do have some younger people who have helped their parents downsize. And so they have that experience, that emotional experience that they can speak to and talk about. But for the most part, if you're in your 30s or 40s and you have a growing family and you're in that place in your life, chances are upsizers are going to be a really great niche for you, because you can show behind the scenes, you can show people, what your life is like. You're experiencing the same things. And the actual messaging and the content creation on all of that is just going to be so much easier
because
for you.
It is who you are.
Yeah. So, and really what you're saying is, which is our third point, is just being relatable and building that relationship, right? It's just, that's how you figure out your audience. Be fucking relatable.
Yeah. I mean, just a simple way. I mean, Peter, joining Jess's group, right? So if you haven't, by the way, join Jess's Facebook group. But when Peter joined, Jess, through leverage, I imagine, unless it was you personally, messaged Peter just saying, hey, how can we help, right? And it was
probably the initial message was leverage, but it was very quick leverage. And evident where Jess was the one behind the scenes.
Which comes back to a scalable business that Jess can't message. You've got thousands of people in your group now, haven't you, that you help? Thousands.
There's about 22,000 agents in that group. Yeah.
22,000. So let's talk a bit more. I know we have about touched on it, but the relationships, this is important. I mean, this is really a big part of lead conversion. Lead generation, like you touched on, like inbound's great. We've generated, I mean, literally hundreds of thousands of leads for agents at this point. It's insane. Like, I don't know how many we do a month, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 a month. It's mental. But there is a huge difference in conversion rate. And it is definitely to do with building relationships, being relatable and focusing on them and not you. So like, what advice would you give for agents on how to be more relatable? I know it's like kind of be you, and that's almost cliche. We've all heard it like, yeah, but what do you mean be you? I've got to kind of give this persona. It kind of, again, comes back to what we're talking about branding and persona. These all intertwine. We find this a lot where it's like.
So don't hide anything. Right. And so it really comes down to, so when I was first like really, really scaling the listings lab, Entrepreneur Magazine did an article on me about basically like how I'd survived domestic violence and moved and like kind of built, found my husband after and like built a 7-figure empire. Right. And so, most people are like, well, I'm not going to talk about the fact that I was in an abusive relationship for 3 years, but, there's an element of transparency and vulnerability. And, I'm not saying that you have to, and this is kind of like rule of thumb, don't talk about your mess until you've cleaned it up. Like nobody wants to know that you're in the middle of a breakdown, right? That's not going to be good for your business. But being able to talk about, vulnerable things that have happened in your past and tell a real story as opposed to like a manufactured story. Stories are 22 times more memorable than
100%. 100%.
Right? So what is going to set you apart from other people is actually your story. And what you put out there and how you choose to actually present yourself to the world. Perfection is extremely boring and it doesn't exist. And there's so many agents out there that are trying to put out this perfect, curated, unrealistic version of themselves because and it all comes from fear of judgment, right? They're afraid to be trolled. But the way that I look at it is like, go after the trolls.
Yeah, you have to.
If someone's trolling you, you're doing something right.
You have to.
You've got to have critics. Like if you've got a critic, you're actually doing something right. If you haven't, you're doing something wrong. That's how it works. I think, and to be fair, I'm not going to blame any kind of social platforms, media. Like, it's kind of all to blame, but at the same token, it's not, because it's down to the people who absorb it and whatnot. But like Instagram is kind of, this is a big thing, right? It's like being famous, like Instagram famous. Like it's the Lamborghinis, it's all these perfect pictures. And then you're like, some people are like, look at these amazing lives. And I'm like, they're behind closed doors, probably pretty shit.
That's
it's probably
pretty
like. Shit.
It's only a snapshot on the surface.
Yeah, exactly. So surface level, I don't particularly bang on. Like I personally feel like I've got a fantastic life, but mine's not like that at all. Like I live in the middle of a national park. I love land. Like I live between here and New York. Like it's fantastic. Like I love what I do, but like I don't drive a Lamborghini. Like I don't do that.
No, and I think that there's a lot of there's an element too of think about the people that you absolutely love to follow, that you feel like they're sharing more than they're sharing more than just beautiful photos.
Share the story. Yeah.
100%. They're sharing the story. They're showing you the realistic behind the scenes and being able to say like, this has been hard, or, I went through a lot and being able to show some of the harder things. The best performing piece of content that I've had in a very long time, was actually a photo of me crying.
Really?
Yeah. It outperformed the rest of my content like almost 10, 15 times. It was a photo of me crying and talking about losing my uncle to COVID.
Wow.
And it just goes to show that, that's real and it was real emotion, but even from a marketing tactics standpoint,
yeah,
it worked.
100%. I mean, I we're just getting to the end here, so we'll close it out. I'll just finish on this point. Yeah. Was I was actually chatting to Peter about there's an entrepreneur that we both know. It was through this guy we actually originally met years ago, and he's a solid dude, and he puts out a lot of content, and he is a lot of social proof. He's good at what he does. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is it was probably a month ago now, because time as I've got older seems to fly, and I'm like, shit, was that a month ago? And he put out how he'd made $10 million that year. And then, but the post wasn't, oh, I've made 10 million. This is why it kind of got my attention, because he was like, everyone says about how much money they made, but it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And he basically did a post of, we made 10 million this year, and then listed out expenses.
Here are our expenses.
And then he was like, this is what I kept out of 10 million. And, for the listeners, it was about 700 grand, right? Out of 10 million, because he's got 2 or 3 business partners. They do a ton of marketing. They've got loads of staff. Anyway, the point of it was like, everyone's like, oh, he's got $10 million. Like, and then it really brought it home. And it's like, this guy is out crushing it. He's doing a lot of good stuff. And it's like, he was like, I actually only pocketed 700 grand. Now, 700 grand is a life-changing amount of money to make in a single year for one person. I get that. But out of all, I see him post every day, literally every day. And it's just like, I'm on blinkers now. I'm like, yeah, it's just, promoting something, whatever. I don't know why this one grabbed my attention. And then I actually decided to read it. And I thought, fuck, like, it was just so real and authentic that I just was like, fair play. I think I actually sent it to Peter as well. And I was like, do you know what? Fair fucking play, because no one is going out and being like,
no one's transparent. Like that.
Everyone talks about top line. Nobody's willing to show the bottom line and show the actual take home, right? So I think that's what really set that apart, is like the realness, because just like what we were talking about with Instagram, everybody's showing the Lambo, but they're not showing the $100,000 debt that they're carrying because of it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, just
we got some hard facts here. This podcast, we make zero money from. It costs us our time and we make zero. That's our top line is zero. Our profit is zero.
I mean, actually, I would argue kind of against that. Not only do we not get paid for it, but we're all here investing time, which if we go by Jess's method that we initially talked about at the beginning of this,
we lose thousands every month.
If we calculate how much we should be, quote unquote, charging, and the guests, right, to bring it on, yeah, we're definitely in the hole.
Yeah, we definitely lose money, and we got to pay people. Yeah,
but we don't do it for anything else other than to bring you guys the fire content, amazing guests like Jess. Where they can actually take you through how they're scaling 6 figures to 7 figures and really beyond. That's really where the value is.
100%. So speaking of which, Jess, just to wrap up here, we'll give you the floor. How can people get in touch, learn from you? You got the Listing Lab, you got all this amazing stuff, courses, coaching, free groups, whatever it is.
Yeah. So I would say the best place is probably my Facebook group. There's a ton of free content in there. I do trainings in there and live streams in there. And, there's tons of assets and templates and all kinds of stuff that gets given away in that group.
Don't forget to mention the name of the group so people can actually go to it.
It's called the Listings Lab Method for Real Estate Agents. So it's just facebook.com/groups/the Listings Lab. So S at the end of listings, no S at the end of lab. And yeah, I mean, we'd love to have you in there. Everyone is a licensed agent. There's no random marketers. If we find random people who aren't licensed in there, they get the boot. So it's genuinely a collaborative environment. It's not like most real estate Facebook groups. It's kind of a bitch fest. That's not what this group is about. It's very much it's value and collaboration.
I understand why you were drilling me, because at the time of me joining the group, the Facebook group, all I had was marketing stuff on my wall. Okay. So I stood out I stood out in the crowd. That's all.
Well, we're both. We cover both. We do it, and we That's how it works for us. But amazing. I think people will get a ton of value from that group. Jess, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I know we've barely scratched the surface of what you could do. So maybe in the future you might have to come back and give us some more juicy details on how they can scale from 6 to 7 figures. So perfect. Thank you, Jess. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode. Now, before you go, we're giving access to a private training we did where we revealed the top 3 niches to get listings today completely for free. So if you want access, you can go and download that training at eliteagentsecrets.com. We're regularly releasing new trainings, guides and cheat sheets, so make sure to head over to eliteagentsecrets.com and sign up so you don't miss out.